Hello everyone, welcome to the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook and this is a podcast celebrating everything to do with the world of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal or extreme metal. Hope everyone is doing well and such. Coming up on this week's show, we're going to have album reviews for Svart Crown, Crossed and Kvelertak, but we will start with Leeched, the very, very hardcore kind of week this week. We will start with Leeched. And their second album, To Dull the Blades of Your Abuse. A very, very fucking kind of awesome album title. They are from Manchester. This is their second album. They are a power violence menace. And yeah, the first note I've got in my sheet in front of me here is heavy as a heavy thing, which is, it's pretty accurate. They are astoundingly heavy. They are very abrasive, and yeah, it's not just they play really fast or they play really low end or anything like that. It's just the way they've mixed everything, and particularly from vocalist Laurie Morby, it's not just heavy and it's not just harsh, it's very unclean, if that makes sense. Laurie Morby, his voice kind of struck me a lot as like static white noise, not in a bad way. It's just the like reverberations in his throat and like the roughness he has in how he sings. It's just very much that like core noise that you just constantly get. I'm really sorry if you're listening to this in any capacity and you have to hear that. And after a while, it become kind of difficult to figure out where one song would finish and where another one would start, purely because they are up here at all times. They don't really let up all that much, and it is that kind of heavy throughout the entire time. And there are like, even with that, there are still different ideas and there are still different experiments that the band are trying to do and trying to play with. I've seen other reviews compare them to industrial hardcore, in the same sort of realms as Code Orange. Personally, I don't think that's right. I think a lot of it's down to Code Orange. At the moment, Code Orange are like the bench point for anything in hardcore right now, and I think that's why Leeched are getting the comparison to them. Personally, I don't see it. The only like industrialness I get from the album, I feel it comes more from the guitars. I feel it's a very organic way of doing these effects and adding this like extra layer to the band sound. You've got like there's like an alarm kind of sound on Now It Ends, and you've got like this real like shrieking guitar part on Praise Your Blades. I feel like in a live setting, Code Orange will always have to have someone on like a mixer or a table that's going to make all these fiddly diddly effects. For Leeched, with the exception of Let Me Die, which is like a very lo-fi industrial kind of song. It's got some really wicked war drums from Tom Hansel in there as well. It was really, really fun. But for the bulk of the album, I feel like it is just going to be them being able to recreate everything, just them, just as a trio. I don't really feel like you're going to need to have that guy on keyboard to really zhuzh up everything else that they are doing. There are still identifiable riffs in amongst all, even though I have said it is very like white noise at the time. It is very abrasive and heavy. I was a big fan of the mathcore style opening of Famine at the Gates. Later on in that song, there's like a really good lower end riff, and there's more of those sort of things in songs like The Grey Tide and Praise Your Blades. And it will come up as well in in fact, every review for this week. I seem to be able to pick out a lot more like the lower end, like lower neck, widdly diddly sort of finger blast sort of stuff. And yeah, I think, for me personally, I think you need to be in a right frame of mind for this sort of thing. And I don't mean like I haven't enjoyed this because I'm sad or anything like that. I don't really have trouble differentiating mood to music, but I've just come off, I think what it is, I just come off a big kick of going through a lot of emo, a lot of Midwest emo. So you Wonder Years, your Menzingers, your Spanish love song sort of thing. So although I like the very crass, angry kind of vocal right now, I prefer it in like a very much more light-hearted delivery. So I think it just hasn't struck me as well purely because of just a different musical mood as opposed to different mental mood. I feel like if I was able to go to the gym at the moment and listen to this, I'll have like a slightly different review and I'll have a slightly different feeling about it. It's kind of hard to take in on speakers. I think this has to be something there to really get into the introverts and the intricacies of the album. You will have to have headphones, but it's overall not an easy album purely because of just how intense it is and how much it's a barrage of noise, sound, and anger. And if that sounds like your sort of thing, you're gonna do pretty well with Leeched, I think. I'm not writing it off. I think it is still a really decent album. You just, for me personally, just have to be in the right kind of, having the right kind of day to properly enjoy it. But if fast and abrasive hardcore is your thing, definitely go for this. It is Leeched. It is their second album, To Dull the Blades of Your Abuse. It is the only beautifully British album this week, which I didn't realise until about 30 seconds before recording, but either way, lots of good things to smash your face to. Moving on, come on. We're going to go to France now. Every British person likes France. For the album, Wolves Among Ashes by Svart Crown. This is their fifth album for the black and death metal mob. It's their first since 2017, Abreaction. It's their first album with their new bassist Julia Negro, and it is their first album since 2013's Profane to feature guitarist Clément Flandois and drummer Nico Muller. I apologise if I've butchered any names. I know I describe them as black and death metal, and a lot of places I've seen describe Svart Crown as black and death metal, and a little tour of their back catalogue would adhere to that label. But I feel for Wolves Among Ashes, it is a bit... I think Black and Death is a bit too broad. There's a lot more things going on this album. There's a lot of groove, a lot of big, like, stompy, groovy riffs in amongst this album. And there's plenty of, like, really melancholic, borderline proggy, shoegazy sort of bits in there as well. Like I said, I had a little bit of a look at the back catalogue. And Abreaction does have this as well, just not in the same vein as Wolves Among Ashes. Abreaction definitely sits more on the lines of a traditional black and death metal kind of sound, whereas I feel like Wolves Among Ashes is experimented a little bit more. And from that, how the riffs hit you, how you've got like these isolated, like quite lonely sounding echo guitar parts. You've got very, very familiar kind of like drum stomps. I found myself comparing it a lot to Gojira in my head. And for those reasons that I just said, not because they're also French, because I tend to do my research on bands after listening to the album, so I had no idea they were French until I came to review this. So I had in my head they were going to be Swedish, because Svart is a Swedish word. It means black. It might also mean something in French. There is always crossover for language, but yeah, I definitely thought these were French for ages. Swedish, sorry. So with all that in mind, bearing in mind, I've basically compared them to like a black metal tinged Gojira, and that sounds fucking wicked on paper. It is sad and surprising that I just did not get on board with this at all. The album comes alive a lot in the latter stages. Down to Nowhere is a good song. Exoria is a flipping brilliant song. That was the part where I really picked up on like the Gojira's kind of like stomp in amongst this like backing wall of sound. But overall, there was nothing. Not nothing, because I just said two songs I liked. There wasn't much that really hooked me in. There wasn't a great deal for me to say this is going to be like a big metal album for me. I felt like the riffs lacked a lot of gravitas. The build-up that I was trying to do the build-up they were trying to make lacked some kind of aura about them that you expect to find in this sort of music, and like the experiments they're trying to go with. I even found Thermageddon, which is the second song, the first proper song on the album. I found that song quite tedious, and I found it quite boring. And yeah, I'll still back up the claims that I'll still back the vocalists. Lead vocalist JB LaBelle, he's backed up by Clement and Julian. He's got like a proper low end growl that sounds really good with this production. He jumps from that into like a strange kind of clean vocal, almost as if he's trying to sing whilst bench pressing. So I thought vocally this album is really good, and I'll still say Exori is a very good song. But for me, I just couldn't get on board with this at all. I don't even think it was like the same sort of thing with Leeched, where it was being right frame of mind. I just thought this was lacking a lot, and it saddens me because I don't like shitting on bands that don't deserve it. I will still stand by my claims that this is a band that's very much Gojira meets black metal, and still on paper that sounds fucking wicked. So if that sounds your sort of thing and you are into your big stompy metal stuff, give Svart Crown it's the V. Give Svart Crown a go. Their album is called Wolves Among the Ashes. They are from France. This is their 5th studio album. And yeah, it was definitely not for me, but it might be for you. And that's wholesome. Kind of. Moving on now to another country. We're going to go to Spain now. We're going to go to Madrid for a debut hardcore release from the band called Cross. The album's called Belly Buried Love. I found out about Cross through an illustrator. The guitarist, or one of their guitarists, Rodrigo, is I cannot remember his last name. That makes me look like a dick. But Rodrigo is an illustrator on Instagram. One of my personal favourites. He's absolutely fucking brilliant. And yeah, he just randomly, because he's got a very particular kind of art style, very like gothic folk kind of thing going on for him. And yeah, he's all amongst this, and then all of a sudden he posts a picture of what would be like the fucking hell, I can't get my words out. What would be the album art for this album, which was just a woman sat there with like black and white with the hand coming at her. Very, very different. So like really stuck out. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, guys, I'm also part of this band. We're about to release this album, and here we are. Here's Crossed. They are a hardcore punk band. It's hardcore that peeks into the world of screamo. So it has got a lot of emotion behind it. It's got a lot of like shoegazy bits in there as well. But I think a lot of where like it slits into the realm of maybe a bit more of a screamo sound comes from the vocalist. I think lead vocalist is Miguel Pardo, but I'm not 100% sure. Social media digging was not as successful as I hoped it would be, but I think it's Miguel. If I've got it wrong, I'm very, very sorry. Whomever is frontman, they have this frantic kind of shriek which just interspersed like the really high-end scratchy kind of sound into more of like a really pained yelp. And it reminded me of that. It reminded me in that regard of Jacob Bannon, of course, of Converge fame, and Converge by vocal sound, Converge by, in some ways, music sound as well. It's not Converge 2.0, and it's very much. I don't even think they're trying to be the next Converge kind of sound. But in the way that it's very fast, frantic hardcore, but every now and again it does slow down to have a lot more groove and a lot more of a like doomy kind of stomp. The final track on the album, Saudade, track 13. Oh, the fucking sun's out, I'm blind. The final track on the album even has like a segment in the middle which is very post-rocky. It's very ethereal, it's very spacey, and yeah, it goes similar sort of ways to how Converge would like expand out the realms of hardcore to have like bits of post-rock and post-metal and doom in there. Cross do that as well, but still understandably a very punk, very hardcore kind of band. And again, a lot of what I enjoyed the most about this album is the groove, and you can still hear the lower end riffs on the album. And I don't often expect that from hardcore bands. So hardcore bands, I think that what really interests me with hardcore bands is Not so much wrist, but like chord progressions, like power chord progressions going up and down the neck. Whereas this, it has that in abundance, don't get me wrong, but there's every now and again where you've got like the slow paced songs that have got to have like the big riffs, so Long Night, Salivate, and the title track. But you've got real fast bits on songs like Melancholia, No Love, Coloured Pain, and Shiver, which are proper, like it's going like D beat levels, and then you've got the guitarist just like fiddling higher up on the neck, and you've got proper riffs happening in amongst the hardcore, and it really popped me, and I really, really enjoyed that. It reminded me a lot of both crossover thrash bands and that like world of hardcore where it's like an extreme hardcore, where people who've got like heavy metal backgrounds are trying to bring that sort of thing into a punk kind of world. So bands like Suicidal Tendencies, Nail Bomb, I found myself comparing to a lot to Superjoint and SOD. And like similar to all those bands, it's very fast, it's wicked speed in amongst songs, but still it's not just power chords. You've also got a lot of like really ear-catching riffs. And I've compared them to a lot of different sources. Nothing about this album, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's not going to be anything you haven't heard before. But the way they've done, how they've done it, and what they're doing, and how they're trying to blend various influences together to make their sound, this was a really, really fun album. It's short. I think it's only, I don't have the time in front of me. I think it's just over half an hour long. So blink and you'll miss it. It's a lot of fun album. And if nothing else, the biggest selling point from the album is track 2, Melancholia. There's like the bulk of the song, it's 1 minute 23, the bulk of the song is just the vocalist screaming, I want to die. And that's just going to set your day straight and narrow, that is. It's really fun. If you're into hardcore, I prefer this to the Leeched album. I think it is because as much as like, it is fast and abrasive, it's still a more cleaner style of being angry. If you could put the two together, if you put Leeched on one side and Crossed on the other, you will see what I mean by Leeched is very dirty sounding hardcore, whereas Crossed is very clean sounding hardcore. It sounds stupid, it sounds ridiculous, and it sounds fucking dumb. But trust me, you'll get it. The album is called Barely Buried Love. I don't know why I struggled with that. That's English. And they are called Crossed. Brand new Spanish hardcore band. I don't know many bands from Spain, let alone any alternative bands. Answer on the postcard, yeah.
The only ones I can think of are the people that did Last Ketchup.
Moving on, because I don't want to think about that anymore. Moving on to the last album of the week then, and I guess album of the week has definitely been my favourite. It is the 4th album from everyone's favourite natives of Stavanger, Norway, because I don't know anyone else from there. It is Kvelertak's brand new album, Split. If you're unfamiliar with Kvelertak, I'd be very surprised. They became very big very quickly. I have sun in my eyes. Again. They came to prominence very quickly, almost on the back of one album, with their particular way of blending hardcore, rock and roll, and black metal. It was very popular. It continues to be quite popular. They're one of the few bands where not many people really have much negative things to say about them. They are almost, I don't want to say quite universally loved, because I'm about to make a point in a minute which contradicts that, but they are, at the very least, universally liked. They are praised a lot for what they do. Why are there still people walking around at the moment? So a bit of a backstory for Split on its own. This is their first album with Ivar Nikolaisen on vocals, formerly of the good... No, not even formerly, still with them. Fuck. Sorry, Ivar. Ivar Nikolaisen also performed with The Good, The Bad and The Ugly, which I reviewed a few weeks ago. And it is also their first album with Horvath Takle Ora on drums. I am so sorry if I have butchered that. I probably have, because OHR is not something that the English dictionary deals with a lot. So yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, bit of a lineup change for the band. It's also their first album since 2016, Natisferd, which was weirdly received. This is why I was going to say they're not a universally loved band, because although critically Natasverd was highly praised. It's got a lot of 7, 8s, and 9s out of 10 from reviews, from like professional reviews like Metal Hammer, Metal Injection, Kerrang, etc. Probably like a 2 out of 10 from Pitchfork, because fuck those guys. When I listen to podcasts and when I listen to, well, like read about what actual people think about it, like people like myself and you, dear listener, a lot of people see it as a big step down, and it doesn't hold up with the 2 albums that came previous, which like are held in super high regard. I personally really enjoyed Natasverd. I think a lot of what people didn't like about it is there was a lot of like trad metal melodies put in there, and to add another string to the bow for what they were doing. And personally, I really liked that. I think it made like the melodic bits really, really dramatic sounding, and then it all came in crushing with the hardcore behind it, and I really, really enjoyed that. But yeah, Natasverd, not really well received by people, but still critically lauded. So it was a weird one, and now they're back. They're definitely much more of a return to the sound from the first 2 albums, which I'll get into in a bit. And there's a bit of a lineup change, so there's a few key things to take apart. We'll start with the introduction of Ivar, because no disrespect to Horvath, people are always going to recognise a change in frontman than they will a change in drummer. I can only really think of the Rev, where people were, and maybe Mike Portnoy, that really, really jumped the gun when a drummer left. So, sorry Horvath, but we're going to talk about Ivar. That in itself, though, it is not easy to replace a frontman. You look at like old school bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Motley Crue, and if you want to even go modern, Tesseract were constantly jumping around until they got Dan Tompkins back on lead vocal duties. Asking Alexandria tried doing it with Dennis, complicated last name, and then they finally brought Andy back, which has been so great ever since. I'm going to do it that side because the picture I put on YouTube is probably going to be that, and I've probably covered half of that. So yeah, it is not always easy to replace a frontman, but it is not impossible. And with the introduction of Ivar, as I said before, I listened to The Good, the Bad and the Ugly earlier this year. I can't remember when I did it, but I've looked at the Good, the Bad and the Ugly album, and although they are a different band, I kind of had like one extra ear out to try and figure out how Ivar would fit in a Kvelertak world. And he doesn't do a lot of like the big black metal kind of screams that you'd find in Kvelertak, but I thought he could do pretty well, and that's about as far as I go because I don't know much about Ivar's vocal talents. I'm really sorry about this chair. It seems extra squeaky today. Either that or just can't sit still. For me, Ivar coming in, I think Ivar does a great job of being very familiar to a Kvelertak sound, whilst still bringing in some nuances that make it his own personal thing. I said in the Good, the Bad and the Ugly review, he brought a lot of Hank Von Hell, Turbo Negro kind of vibes, and I think he's done that again. Uglas Hegemony? Track 6. That's just dripping in Turbo Negro juices, as disgusting as that sounds. So yeah, I think as far as that frontman goes, I think Ivar's done a great job. Like I said, he brings a lot of his own character, so he's not just a tribute singer, or he's not just a carbon copy. He is adding a bit of freshness to Kvelertak after, and that's no disregard to Erland? I'm going to have to get his name now, aren't I? It was Erland Hjelvik. Yes, no, it's not like Erland needed replacing, it's just, when these things happen, it's nice to have something, a slightly different approach. That's just my own personal thing. The second big point that I've seen a lot of people talk about, which didn't really pass me by really, it's Kvelertak's use of the English language, something that they had never really done previously. So, lead single came out, which was Brothbrand, that was obviously still in Norwegian. Everyone enjoyed it. Everyone just like, cool, we're going to have new Kvelertak. And then Crack of Doom came out, and everyone sort of like lost their mind a little bit. Because from what I've seen, or from what I've heard and read, singing in Norwegian added to the mystery and added to the aura of the band. And as far as I can recall, only Crack of Doom and Discord, which features Nate Newton on the song, they're the only ones that I can really hear that uses the English language. And like I said, it wasn't ever something that I really considered, and it just seems like a people making a big fuss of something that in retrospect is kind of trivial for me, because I know like people love the fact that Rammstein got massive despite mostly singing in German, but it was a thing they mostly sang in German. I've heard songs of them where they're in English, in Russian, in French, and they still got this big aura and this big presence about them. So to me, it was very much a non-point, but I had a little bit of dive. As far as I recall, it's only used on Crack of Doom and Discord, and they're the only two songs that have got guests in, and both guests are native English speakers. You've got, like I said, Nate Newton of Converge and Old Man Gloom, on Discord, and you've got Troy Sanders of Mastodon on Crack of Doom. To me, it just makes sense to have a song in English when you're bringing in English guest vocalists, or English-speaking guest vocalists, excuse me. Because the alternatives are have the rest of the song in Norwegian, and then you got Troy and Nate coming in for their parts, and it would almost seem out of context for some random bits of English to be in the song. Or alternatively, you try and get Troy and Nate to learn Norwegian. And I don't know what's the word? The timetables, or what's the proper word for like a planner? Schedule, there we go. I don't know what the schedules are for Troy and Nate, but I don't know if they've got enough time to learn a song or learn lyrics in Norwegian. And not only that, they need to then learn how to get the proper inflexes and proper pronunciation for Norwegian words. And trust me, I've tried learning a bit Norwegian. It's very, very weird. And then they've got to be able to sing in their iconic styles in this foreign language, which they have to learn. So I don't think it's too much of an ask to go into English. Having heard Good, the Bad and Ugly, it sounds like Ivar is already a pretty native speaker anyway. So, like I said, I thought it was a moot point. Crack of Doom, when it first came out, I wasn't a fan of it purely because I just wasn't a fan. I thought it was quite a kind of a boring song. Listen to it more and more. It's so much better than what I gave it credit for. The rock and roll vibes in the chorus are just beautiful. Discord is a really great song as well, really energetic gang vocal chorus, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, the use of English, like I said, moot point. I didn't really think it was that much of a drama, personally. In terms of the overall band sound, to me, they stripped back a lot of the black metal that they've been using over the years. You still got like songs of prominence, so Necrosoft and Vedpreden av Nihil. Again, I'm sorry. Songs like that, they've got, I think Necrosoft opens with like a blast beat, tremolo picked opening. And I think Vedpreden, I think it's a point in the middle where it goes like super blast beat and super black metal-y. It's certainly much more of like a punk and roll kind of album, which is obviously it's a lot of the like trad metal stuff's gone as well. So it's so much more of like a rock and roll meets hardcore punk kind of album, and from that it makes it sound fucking just brilliant. I really really enjoyed it. Like I said before, Crack of Doom, total party song, really really good rock and roll sort of stuff. Wow, why did I write this down? Stevnomort med Satan, or track 9 to everyone else. Uglas Hegemony, track 6, and Groove-ladened, which is the opening track. I'm really sorry, like I said, I tried learning Norwegian once, many years ago. those songs would just cause excessive amounts of limbs in a live setting. Songs like Fanden, Tidata Hull, or track 7, and Brand, which is track 5, they retain some trad metal bits, and I just said I got rid of most of them, but there are little snippets here and there. Retain some of the trad metal bits from Natsford, and that is until Fanden. First half of the song, it is very much like rock and roll, punk rock, little inklings of like trad metal there, and then it just stops and just restarts as a full-on thrash metal slam, and it's great. Like I said, I really, really, really enjoyed this. I kind of had low hopes, not because I have disliked Kvelertak before. I've only heard Natsford, and like I said, I really enjoyed it, so I was kind of worried that the general consensus would be that Natsford was the start of a downward decline. It is so much not that at all. I vastly underestimated what Kvelertak could do. It's a total party album. It's so much fun. It's way more upbeat, boppy punk. In the songwriting, like I said, I'd describe it more as like a punk and roll kind of album as opposed to black and roll or heavy metal or anything like that. And yeah, like I said, big fan of the fact that rock and roll takes more of a place than black metal. I think this is, especially with a very turbo negro-y vocalist in Ivar, I think that fits the mold so much better than making him do like a black metal kind of thing. Yeah, I thought this was fantastic. It is a triumphant return for the band, and I can't wait to see what happens next, because yeah, this was just brilliant. I really enjoyed this. I don't know what the general consensus is in terms of reviewers and general listenings or general people, but for me, no, this is a cracking album. I've already got the chorus to Crack of Doom in my head, and I haven't listened to a song in 2 days, so good things, good shit. It's just good shit. And it's also, that is it. Well, this is it. This is all it. It's done. We're over. This is done. Fuck. At Desolation Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I have a YouTube. It's somewhere. Just click it. Click the. I've got a link tree. Click that. It's in there somewhere. And alongside this, you will also have the newest update to the monthly podcast. Fucking hell. Newest update to the monthly playlist. It's a different word that begins with P. Where it's going to have all the greatest hits from everything I've reviewed over last month and then some. And then I'm just going to start again, so do April. So go off and find that, enjoy it, listen to it, do things, and such, get in contact, social medias, stay safe. That's about it.